All right, so now that we've got the basics out of the way, I wanted to go through and actually show myself writing a beat sheet here. Now I'm going to, which I've already done this. I have a copy right here that's my actual beat sheet for when I was making the movie. It goes all the way through to the end there. I wanted to actually show you guys how I'm doing this and kind of explain a little bit more about it. I don't want to just leave you guys hanging with these things, but for the project title, we're going to call this Come and See is the name that I'm working on now. I typically am pretty terrible at writing names for movies, but I'm going to start with this one and we'll kind of see what happens from there. I also date these. You'll notice that on the original one, I started this April 3rd. This is just showing, you want to do this so that you can, if anybody is ever asking you to prove that you made an idea, you now have a date that's going to tell you exactly when you were working on this and that sort of thing. I have a log line here, which is a little bit different than the one that I did in the log lines video, but you'll notice that it's largely the same. A woman plans a vacation to a cabin in the middle of the woods to have fun with her friends one last time before she's leaving for good. But when they start getting killed off and reanimated by an unseen force lurking in the woods, she must learn to let go of them before they tear her to pieces and drag her back into the woods. So that's kind of the premise that we're working on. Opening image is going to be the very first thing that you ever want to see in your feature film. It starts page 1. Now, an important thing to remember when writing any script is people are going to remember the first and the last thing that you do. So you really want to make your opening image pop, which is why it's got its own kind of byline here. For this one, I have a scene here where they're all driving and they almost hit somebody with their car. They get out in the middle of the road, but there's nobody there. So that's going to kind of start it off with a bang. Essentially, I'm just having them show up, and so I wanted to start with something that kind of alludes to what's going to happen later in the script, which we'll get into more. I mean, this is literally the treatment, so you're going to see all of what the story entails. But the setup is going to be where you show your main character and exactly what's going on in their life. So you typically want to show them at work, at home, and, different things like that. Basically everywhere that you're going to be, and any necessary information that's going to go up in your setup. That happens on pages 1 to 10. So we've gotten past the first page. Now this is starting from page 1 all the way through page 10. I have this right here. So they're all friends. There's 5 of them total. There's 2 guys and 3 girls. We're going to outline our characters a little bit more in depth at another time, but 2 of them are dating and the other 3 are single. One of the girls has just gotten some really good news, and it's sort of a celebration of sorts. They rented out a cabin for the weekend. Now when they get there, the dog starts freaking out, which is going to be important later in the story. We're going to do that down here, but it's basically just from the time that they arrive, they're going to keep going forward. The theme stated is going to be what you want people to get from your movie, like the major theme that's going to exist. This would also come up down here. The break into 3 is basically going to be a reiteration of the theme stated. So basically the person is learning that lesson that was their fatal flaw before they kind of moved in. For this one, I have basically other people can decide for you. I talked about this briefly in my initial concept. I want everybody to decide for themselves that they're going to be possessed by this thing. You have to give yourself willingly to it, and then it takes you over. So I wanted my theme stated to be along those same lines. Other people can decide things for you. You alone have to make your decisions, and you have to live with them. So it's telling me basically, the consequences are going to be shitty, and they're going to decide exactly what happens. Now, The catalyst is going to be where things change. So your protagonist is given a choice that they must decide one way or the other how they're going to respond. They have to decide, if you were making a movie that was like a dance competition, this, the catalyst would be where they actually learn about that dance competition. Maybe they see a flyer that has the amount that they're going to win, and that's what they need to, I don't know, pay rent or whatever the solution there is. Now for the catalyst in this movie, I wanted to do a pretty interesting scene. They find the dog that they brought with them, and it's torn to pieces with blood all over the place. Now, the dog is sort of the harbinger of doom, so he knows, like, even back in the setup, the dog is freaking out. I've kind of set up that storyline here. I'm going to have a scene where they actually go and they're looking for this dog, and the dog is basically just completely annihilated. It's destroyed. They don't know what they're going to do about it. And it's in just tiny pieces all over this field that they find him in. So that's their first sort of indication that, hey, something's not right, and it's not something that just happened. That dog really got messed up. The debate is going to be where they actually decide what they're going to do with themselves. They were given a choice here at the Catalyst. Now, in the debate section, they have to decide how they're going to respond from that. In this movie, they are going to immediately start running back towards the house. Something majorly wrong has happened. When they get back to the place, they try and leave, but the car engine has been taken out of the car and disassembled, and it's now sitting in a bunch of pieces in front of the car. The way I want that to take place is that I don't want them to see that right away. I want them to show up in the car to be fine. They go inside to get their bags. They come out. All of this has happened. So it's kind of broken it down into its smallest pieces. If they wanted to, they could put it back together, but they're never going to have enough time to put it back together. So they go inside to kind of figure out what they're going to do and go over their options. Take stock of everything that they have. They try and make a phone call, but the phone lines are cut and or not working. The radio turns on, which this is where I'm going to have a sort of like a, if you think of the old chorus from ancient Greek plays where they're kind of saying what's going on, that to me is this radio character. I want him to be another sort of harbinger. So anytime you hear the radio, something terrible is about to happen. And that's where I'm putting that. We're going to be able to narrow this down a lot more when we're actually writing the script, but before you can do that, you have to decide all the way through to the end exactly what you're going to do. The break into two is going to be, so you've set up your choice, they've decided to move forward with it. I mean, if they had decided here to leave, if they even could have left, which is not something that was really a possibility for these characters, but they've come to the realization that things just aren't going to get better and they're going to need to react. If there was a choice to be made, that would be where it would happen. This is where they've actually made the choice, and now they're going into their kind of separate world, and you're breaking into the second act. Now, in the 3-act structure, which Sid Field wrote about in his book Screenplay, which was actually really pretty good. And a lot of what Blake Snyder did, I think, is based on that 3-act structure. You could see I've even broken these down into 3 acts to make it easy on myself. Now, typically, this is going to be about a quarter of your script. Act 2 is going to take up another 2 quarters, so basically half of your script. Most of your story takes place in the second act after things have already been decided. And then the third act is really just where the the major sort of boss fights are going to take place. Every story you've ever read has been the same way. B story is going to be a character that they meet that is it's a very knowledgeable character, somebody that knows what's going on and can be able to kind of shed a little bit of light on what's going on. To me, the B character in this one is going to be the radio. It's somebody that they didn't know before, but, things are happening. In the second act, which page 25, you typically want something to really happen. I had the first person die. It's the boyfriend who's part of the couple dies, and he's basically calling the thing out that's out in the woods, and he screams loudly, and it basically immediately gets killed. Because he's sort of made his choice at that point, which is definitely not something you're supposed to do. But the B story is going to be where the radio comes in. They're freaking out. There's a trail of blood outside, so we know that the guy's not still alive. He's definitely dead, but the preacher comes onto the radio. To me, no, that's weird. To me, the craziest and most evil that you can get is it's twisting the words of a sort of salvation. So I decided to make this character a preacher, but he's not rightly dividing the word, and he's sort of blaspheming it, and so he comes off like somebody that would be a sort of, good thing. In dark times, often people will turn to the Lord, and this story, he sort of represents that same sort of evil. I see it as sort of like a mouthpiece for the thing that's outside, because I'm never going to show it. I'm only going to show indications about what that thing is. And basically the effect it's going to have on people. Now, the fun and games section is where all of your favorite, like when you were thinking about making your movie, it's where all of the sort of things are taking place. Most of the major story plot is taking place. Your main character's making some actions forward. He's kind of living up to things and doing exactly what he needs to do. So you have page 25 where things happen. There's generally between page 25 and 30, the character is just freaking out. Things are not right. They're kind of dealing and coping with the new world that they're in, and you sort of establish that there. By page 30, you get a little bit more guidance. Fun and games picks up right at page 30. A lot of times this is where chase scenes come in, that sort of thing. So with this, I'm having them sort of barricade the door. The boyfriend is going to come back, because everybody that dies in this movie is going to be possessed and come back. It's even stated in the log line that they're being killed and reanimated by an unseen force. So, I'm just starting to bring those characters back. I'm establishing that they don't really care for the light is something that I wanted to do with this one. He tells them if they would just come with him and he can show them, show them something wonderful out in the woods, which he just died in order to get there. So it doesn't look that appealing to anyone, but he comes back. He eventually convinces his girlfriend to come and see, and he just beats her to death effectively, and he crashes his arm through the window and smashes her face into the broken glass, and then carries her body away back into the woods, because everybody that dies from this thing is going to have to be killed pretty brutally. And he convinces her, so she decides, we'll just see how we'll hear him out. We got to let him in. And, as soon as she makes that choice, and as soon as she knows in her heart that that's the way that she wants to go, she's immediately killed. And the body is taken back into the woods, where presumably this thing that is having this effect on people would be. The radio keeps going because every time the thing is attacking or the thing is near, the radio keeps announcing its presence. And, this is a good 20 pages of stuff. So there's going to be a lot of things that are happening here. They try and unplug the radio, but it keeps playing, showing that it's sort of connected with the thing. The other guy who there was two that we established, which we'll get into characters after this. I like to just make my treatments pretty general. You'll see I just call them guys or girls or whatever, and then I'll typically get a little bit more into it from there. You can even see in the original, after I've already kind of done this, I've announced who these people were and what their things are. That's another step for another time, but you want to, at this point, you want to just be narrowing it down further than it was before. You don't want to do all of your work. Half the battle is just kind of doing it piece by piece. And later, when you're trying to convince people that your project is viable, showing them things like this are really going to help. So you want to make sure you're getting all the way through. We're already halfway through this thing, so we're moving right along. But next we have the midpoint, which is exactly halfway. Now, there are two things that will typically happen at your midpoint. There is either the main character wins a battle against the antagonist or vice versa. That's typically going to show you how the rest of this takes place. More so the bad guys closing in than anything else. But at the midpoint, basically, you have two options. Your good guy wins in its first sort of battle with the bad guy. And if that's the case, then the bad guys close in is going to be the bad guys sort of gaining in power. You can think, if you ever saw the movie Ninja Turtles, I don't know why I like this analogy for the midpoint, but if you think of the Ninja Turtles, they fight Shredder kind of early on in the movie, and they win right about the midpoint, but Shredder pushes his hand up through the slats in the thing, and so the bad guys closing in is him kind of regaining his power and coming back stronger. If your bad guy wins, then the bad guys close in is going to be basically them sort of running the show for a while your good guys sort of gain in their power. So there's a shift. Another important part of this is that the bad guy has to know now what's going on. He's generally found out the stakes are raised at this point, so things are getting harder and harder for these people, and there's just generally a lot more of a struggle. So our midpoint on this one, the couple comes back, so now there's two of them, and they're both talking about how happy they are since they've seen the thing that's out in the woods, and they just want to show them so that they can feel better. They're talking it up quite a bit. The guy loses his shit, and he tears down their barricade, and he opens it up. But like I've been saying, they have to decide. So, they don't know what's going on. The guy who was in the fun and games starting to listen to the radio a little bit more, kind of has an epiphany moment where he decides that, he's going to be okay with that. And so he tears down the barricade, which opens them up to issues. The couple doesn't really come into the house, but they do kill the guy. At this point, I'm also going to have, and the bad guys close in, there's two remaining people. There's two remaining girls. They go into, basically they're pushed back into a smaller space, so things are kind of much worse for them. The bad guys are now starting to take over what's going on. The dog is also back, kind of causing problems through all of this. So, now they're outnumbered 4-2, And one of them is going to be just not doing well with that. She's just really unhappy. She's definitely leaning more towards the wrong direction at this. They're trying to keep their stuff together, but they're just not able to. We're going to have the people coming back, and they're going to be taunting them so that, they're going to have to try and figure things out. All is lost on page 75 here. That is when all of the struggles that they've been dealing with are then kind of, they lose everything. I mean, it sounds pretty cliche being that it's all is lost, but it seems insurmountable at this point. The person has nothing left and they don't know what to do. So at this point, the other girl who was freaking out gives up, and she's taken with the others and killed brutally right in front of them. Right in front of the remaining girl, who's barely able to keep it together, and she breaks into... They break into the room. She's able to kind of take back some of that space after this, but at this point, she's lost everything. The barricades are barely holding. Nothing's really working out for them. There's then 10 pages where the Dark Night of the Soul, she basically just wallows in it. Something that happens in every movie. There is the... you are supposed to try and put a whiff of death into this piece. So basically, either the character thinks about suicide, somebody dies. I mean, everybody dies pretty much in this one, but she's trying to take stock of the things she has, but there's just nothing left. She loses the living room, where they were before, and basically everything is closing in. She's worried about how she's going to respond. Break into 3. This is moving into the third act. Now, like I said at the very beginning here, the third act is really where there's the major fight between the protagonist and the antagonist. She's got to take the thing head on at this point, and she really has to kind of figure things out from there. She sees the opportunity, and she uses the opportunity to make her move at this point. So things are starting to happen. Now, the finale, which takes place in page 85 to 110, this is assuming 110 pages. The numbers are not necessarily set in stone. The script that I have right now is a 95-page script, but these beats need to generally happen along those same points anyway. So even though I have this written as 110, I know that, basically the fractions of those are still going to fall right about the same point, so it doesn't have to be exact, especially at this stage where you're really kind of just narrowing it down a little bit further than it was before. Storming the castle. Now, she learned in the last section here, that light affects them, and they shy away from it. It's not that it hurts them or that they are going to be stopped by it, but they don't like it, and so she's kind of learned a little bit more how to figure things out for herself, and she's used that to kind of make her move. This is starting right there. So she uses the light to get past them a little bit back into the living room, and she's able to shut them out and get some movability around the location. So areas that were lost to her before have now opened back up again. The new plan begins, which is basically just her deciding what she's going to do before she actually does it, The storming the castle, a lot of times you'll see, is people actually It's like the suit up stuff that you see on just about everything, where they, like put on gloves and all these things, and they get their guns and they get ready for stuff. That's the sort of storming the castle. They kind of make a new plan about what they're going to do. Now, in this new plan, she gathers every light in the house that she can. So she's now figured out a way that she has leverage over these people, and she's using that. They're outside taunting her, saying that she can only last so long, and she's doing everything she can. She's getting all the flashlights around to turn them on. All is lost again. Her plan does not work. It was doomed to fail. It never works. It's just the nature of the beast, You got from 85 to 110, so everybody knew that the initial plan probably wasn't going to succeed. And without her learning the new lesson that she needed to, which was that it's kind of, with the theme stated, she has to decide for herself that she's going to survive, and she has to decide that she's not going to let people in, and she has to live with her decisions. So her friends outside cut the lights, and they kick open the door. They all come into the room and try and grab her. So all is lost again. She's back in the dark, and she's got nothing to defend herself with. The new plan. So at this point, they're kind of taking her into the woods. And she breaks free, and she starts running away from them, and she takes off running as fast as she can, and she's kind of moving. Then there is the new man. What that is she's learned her lesson. The lesson that was the fatal flaw. She's learned it, and she's implemented it, and now she's going forward. In this movie, I'm gonna have a bunch of people surround her. So effectively, all the people that would have been victims to this thing prior to this, because this sort of thing just doesn't come out of nowhere. If it's this powerful, I figured it had to have had some, something before this. This is just them coming into that. Now, there's all these people around her. She's got her lights. The lights are, she ends up tripping and hurting herself. She keeps fighting and she keeps struggling and trying to get away, but they're all over, and she's, not really going to get away. And in the final image of this movie, she falls down and is pulled away from the camera, and the people, which I was thinking this has changed a little bit since I've written the script, but she falls down. She ultimately surrenders to the thing, and she is taken away. So we started out, she's going somewhere, which this is still pretty rough. Like, you can only narrow these things down so far. This is now effectively, 3 pages? It's sort of 2.5 pages. So we've got just a little bit more work done on it than we had before. And it just narrows it down a little bit further. We've got a general storyline. We know exactly where we're going from beginning to end. The next things that I would do would be to outline my characters, which we'll talk about those going forward. That's a whole episode in and of itself. That's not really what this specific thing is about. And, there's probably some work that I could have done to this. This is my 5th feature film that I've written, so I've got a pretty good shorthand for myself. You may not have that. Any amount of work that you put into this thing is going to be infinitely helpful to you. I definitely recommend going above and beyond at this stage, because it really helps. But the next episode, we'll get into our character development. From there, we'll kind of start talking about what we want each scene to be, but at this point, I think that it is officially done, we'll go ahead and title this, because you're going to be referencing this quite a bit, especially if it's your first feature. Like I said, I've done this a lot of times, so I'll remember these steps pretty much all the time. But it's definitely wonderful to have. But until next time, it was a pleasure as always, and you guys have a wonderful evening. Hello Internet, my name is David Baugh, and I wanted to talk to you today about the start of something new.